All right. So I suggest that we start, Carla. Hold on. So I'm just going to get everything up. So first of all, thanks so much everyone for joining. Thank you, Carla, for joining us and hosting this awesome Hangout. I'd just like to give a little bit of background with regards to Carla. She's been a practicing BCBA for almost 5 years, has been in the field for 9. She's been using the balance program with her 4-year-old during therapy sessions and is eager to share what she has learned. And a fun fact is she's also a twin and fully bilingual. With that being said, Carla, can you please kick off this awesome meeting and also give a little bit of background with regards to your CEU event, should people wish to look at that?
Of course. So I want to start by saying thank you for inviting me because this is very exciting. I trained last year with Dr. Camilleri on the PFA and SBT. Was super lucky to get him as my trainer. And after I ended the program, I was able to present with Dr. Hanley about my case. So then I was selected to get trained by Dr. Rupel to be a trainer and a mentor for other people. And while we were doing that training, I was able to meet with her. I think it was every 2 weeks on a Friday. And I decided that I wanted to make the best out of my time with her. So I started learning about balance. In this whole time period, my then 3-year-old, I didn't know that he was delayed, but we also speak 3 languages. My husband was a little bit delayed in his talking, so I got a lot of pushback onto like, no, let him be. But we're BCBAs, so I was like, no, there's something not quite right. And after I took the course on FTF and was just picking Dr. Rupel's brain in those meetings, I realized that my son would really benefit from the balance program. His name is Tiago, and Tiago, one thing, he wants things his way. He wants it to be his idea, and there's a lot of screaming, a lot of kicking, and throwing of stuff. I really got tired of having to carry him down the stairs screaming and crying and then having to put him in the car seat. So I was like, let's just do this. And yeah, while I was doing it, I transitioned companies, and my new company provides CEUs, and they were asking us, what can we present on? And I had already been doing videos because I want to see in a few years where my son was and like where he's then. And so I was just taking videos, and I was like, oh, I can present on balance. And that's just how it all came to today, I guess.
Awesome. We so appreciate that. And we so appreciate you sharing your knowledge in this space and also with your CEUs. It's really exciting to see new events occurring with regards to the balance program. Questions have been submitted. I would also like to invite everyone who's present just to open your mic and ask questions. This was really supposed to be the format of a Hangout in which everyone could just ask their questions. We do have guiding questions just so that we don't look at each other oddly for 60 minutes, but please just unmute and open your mic and ask your questions, because here's your opportunity to speak to Carla. Awesome. So with that being said, Carla, I would like to present you with the first question that was submitted by Karen. And her question is, are there elements of the balance program that can be implemented in schools? What is your opinion?
I think yes, and I was very excited when I read this question because just yesterday I had an IEP addendum meeting with my son's teachers, and I told them that he needs to start working on tolerance in school. So we were able to, I said, this is how we worked with tolerance. So I taught him that he can say, "Now I'm not ready. No, thank you. Not right now," or, give me some time. He loves to say, "I'm not ready." So I told her that that was a good one when she was trying to transition him to another center or making him share his toys, because he's dropping to the floor over there or just crying. So I do think that there's elements that can be implemented. Right now, we're going to implement that tolerance response for Tiago. We're going to implement his functional communication. So he already had a goal for communicating, and now we're going to add that into his sharing toys with friends. And yeah, I feel like that's going to open the door for him to be able to cooperate with the teacher and to, you know, sharing the toys. He's going to know that eventually he can ask for it back. He's going to understand that the teacher is understanding his frustration with having to share, acknowledging it, but also teaching him that it's okay to give up that toy for a few minutes and then later ask for it again. All he has to do is just use his words. So definitely, I do think that there's elements that can be implemented in school.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that answer, Carla. I do have a question that adds on to this, but I also know that Karen has a question. So Karen, do you want to ask your question?
Yep. First off, Carla, thank you for sharing. I know, from just my own family that sometimes it's very vulnerable to be speaking about your own family, and especially as a BCBA where you're like, but I'm a BCBA. And it's like, but it's my family. And that's why we're not supposed to work with our family as a professional. I guess my question kind of relates to one of the things that I struggle with my daughter, which is knowing, we talk a lot about in the PFA SBT process, antecedent modifications and how they can be useful, but it's more behavior modification versus teaching skills for life. And I just wonder at what point you kind of thought to yourself, I'm not going to continue to try, antecedent modifications, even if they are effective. Because I think about that with my daughter, like it's effective for me to, put up a system of rewards. And even when I worked with FTF, was consulting with our company, I even kind of asked some of those same questions of when do I say, no, I should try to do the balance program with her versus no, it's okay to do this sometimes. So I'm just curious on that end of things, kind of what kind of swayed you to, what, I don't want to just, do a sticker chart. And again, that may not have been effective, but I want to do balance and kind of really target the prevention of these behaviors.
It was at the point where I realized that I was getting so frustrated, and I realized that I was trying to convince him to work with me by, like, I also used token system. I used the first and then I had everything I could. And then I was like, this is driving me insane. So at what point do I try something new? And balance, it was great. Like it just had when I read about it and when I took the course, it was literally everything that I was trying to get away from with Tiago. I'm okay with him saying this sucks, or I really don't want to do this, but you can say it while you're walking with me to the car. And that's what I was seeking. I didn't want that blind compliance from him. I didn't want him to be excited to do work. I just wanted him to be okay with doing work. Like, this is what we have to do now. I just have to put on my shoes without screaming. And so when I learned about balance and learned that this is what we need, we're just gonna get rid of the behaviors, he can still say, I hate this in a nice way. That kind of convinced me, and I was already at the point where I'm basically losing my mind, sorry. But I needed some extra help. And so that's when I decided to make the jump. I also like that you mentioned something, and I like in the beginning when you were telling me about, we're BCBAs and this is our family, and it's hard to talk about it. This is like a big parenthesis. But I was just telling my own family because I'm from Puerto Rico, and Hispanics are very ashamed of disabilities. And so I was telling my own family that, there's a lot of value in us as professionals teaching other people that it's okay. Your child has a disability. All you need to do is help them. That's where, like, what you really need to do instead of kind of hiding it. And now I'm off my soapbox.
No, I think, and Penny, you can always kick me if I talk too much in this, but what I want to highlight that you said, Carla, that I think is really important for other people to hear and to recognize is that sometimes this is also about, it's not just about the client, it's about the whole client, all of the clients, including the family members. And that's one of the things that's always struck me about this is the amount of hoopla that we put into antecedent modifications and the amount of time and energy we put into all of this, the emotional energy, the physical energy, could be corrected by teaching the skills. And by doing that, and that's kind of where your breaking point kind of was. And I think that that's an important thing for people to realize, because it's not just about, it is about the learner, but it's also about the context of the entire family, the context of all of these different things. And this can be a way for us to build rapport with the parents in the process, build rapport with them in terms of feeling empowered, because even like you said with the shame, so many families, they're coming to parent training with their heads down. They're like, I know I didn't do everything I should have done. I don't, and we as behavior analysts, unfortunately, have a history of becoming aversive when it comes to this versus like early intervention providers who, I've found to be very, in some ways I almost wish they had held me a little bit closer to the task, but to be very non-judgmental. And that has made a huge difference in terms of dealing with all of the other issues that come along with this. So
Karen, I really love the points that both you and Carla make with regards to antecedent interventions compared to the balance program. With antecedent interventions, and both of you mention it, is it makes for very hot and sweaty parents, a very hot and sweaty environments. We're taking everything away in the hope that the child or whomever does not come into contact with, because then we have the behaviors. What I like about the balance program is it puts a little bit of accountability back towards the child, where we're not just going to have them tolerate a whole bunch of things they cannot endure, but we are going to bring them into contact with and teach them the skills. And what I like about the balance program, it really is analyzing, okay, what's going on here? Why are you unable to deal with this in this moment? And what are the skills that you are missing? So it puts a little bit of accountability back towards the child, and really looks at, okay, what are the components that are missing here? And what is it that you need to learn to deal with this? Because I can't take away the sound from you your entire life. You cannot always wear the headphones. Sometimes they'll have to come off. And when you remove the headphones, what are the skills that you need? Do you need to learn to say, I don't want that? Do you need to learn to walk away? Do you need to have different choice? So it really looks at components and skill acquisition. And that's what I hear both of you say.
Yeah, it's just we're done with avoiding the behaviors. We're gonna work through it, and slowly in a positive way. And what I really loved about balance is that Tiago and I kind of became a team instead of me trying to teach him. I learned a lot. I'm very impatient, and I learned that I needed to be flexible. In order for me to also be able to teach him things, I need to be calm. I need to be happy, relaxed, and engaged. And seriously, the days that I wasn't, he's not going to work with me. And so there's just so much in this program than just like we're going to, work with emerging problem behaviors. It's just more, we're going to bring a little bit more peace into this relationship. We're going to make you guys understand each other more and see what works for you both. And so yeah,
I love that. I love hearing you happy, relaxed, and engaged. And I also love the fact that the togetherness of it, and also the part where you're saying, I also had a lot to learn. And basically he taught you, right?
yes.
I think those 3 points are so valuable.
Carla, just another follow-up question, which I think you kind of hinted at, and I, again, have found myself struggling with this as well, very surprisingly, mind you. Of course, being a parent brings up all sorts of different things, which is how you, maybe you didn't, but how you struggled with that uncomfortableness of trying something new and something that maybe was not how you were raised. So for me, I find myself shocked sometimes where I'm like, I was raised in a very you know what I'm trying to say. A strict household where, it was kind of more that, snipping at you, anger, kind of, stay in line because, my grandfather was military, all of those things. And I find myself in the very, very, when my back is really against a wall, that's the part that comes out, and really needing to kind of regulate that. And for a lot of families and a lot of parents, I would imagine, again, there's that uncomfortableness of, wait, I'm going to do what? I'm going to, this is how it's going to be. And I wonder if that was an issue for you as well, or again, how you kind of moved through that uncomfortableness if you had it.
Full disclosure, I started therapy at the same time I started balance. So that really helped with me being able to identify my own behaviors and why I got so frustrated and work that into balance. During, I think we were at step 4 or 5, we actually went to Puerto Rico for vacation, and that came up. My mom was like, your child is out of control and you need to do something. And so I was telling her about this program, and no one's gonna understand it until they see him being able to cooperate. And there's no way that I can, convince her that no, he's doing really good right now compared to where he was when he's screaming his face off. But I think I've been very, very conscious of the things that I don't want to do as a parent, because I also know the effect it had on me. And sometimes that, like you said, when your back is up against the wall, aka 6 p.m. and you're at your wit's end and they're still screaming, that comes out. It's what we learn, is how we were raised. And I was kind of raised in a similar way. So I do a lot of, and this comes through therapy, so I don't know if this is helpful through your answer, but I do a lot of, what strategies do I need to use in this exact moment? And it's been a learning experience. I've been half and half. Sometimes, sorry, I yell back when he's overwhelming me. And sometimes I'm able to say, he's in this state and what do I need to do to de-escalate him? And I'm able to do that. So I think all parents can benefit from empathy from us as practitioners. I understand that this is extremely hard. I understand that at 7 p.m. it's too much. And like I don't know if this is helpful. But for me, it was kind of being really conscious of what my end goal is, or not my end goal, but where I want to be with Tiago in terms of our relationship, and what aspects of my history are going to help him and what are not, and just doing very conscious when he's engaging in behaviors, or very conscious when I'm trying to keep him in HRE, of what things I can bring in from my past and what things I need to change and leave at the door. If that helps.
If I
Thanks.
can jump in.
Sorry,
on that real quick.
Oh, Emily. Hi, Emily. Yes, jump in.
Hi. That's something I struggle a lot with too. And I will say, I mean, obviously it depends on your child, but for me, what's been really helpful is when I do have those moments, which are not as infrequent as I would like, then talking to him afterward and telling him like, hey, I'm really sorry. I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. And let's talk about like maybe what I can do next time that would be better for you. And I found that like me apologizing and acknowledging when I've done something that I'm not proud of, builds a lot of that trust back up and helps like de-escalate him really much more quickly, like letting him know that like, hey, I'm human too and I do that.
I love that point, Emily. Right?
Emily, Tiago, his language skills are not to like, I do that with my oldest. I say I'm sorry and I explain. With Tiago, I just leave it at I'm sorry. But I love that you brought that up because I completely forgot that I also do that. And it's such an important part of one, letting them know that we're all humans, like Karen is saying, we're all humans, we react, we have emotions, but we're also accountable for our reactions, and we know that they can hurt other people. And I think that's super valuable for all kids to learn.
What I also loved, Emily, is the fact that you said, I'm sorry and I messed up. That makes a shared experience, right? It's not just you suck, you created this, and now we all have to suffer through it. It is, we did this together, and now we're going to solve it together. So that shared experience is so important and validating, and also helps heal and move forward. I really think that's so valuable.
And I think it helps with image too, again, like depending on your child's age and stuff like that. But mine, you know, has expressed a lot of like, I'm always in trouble and people don't like me for that. And, you know, I'm bad for that. And so me acknowledging to him, like, you know, hey, I don't do everything right. I'm not you know, I don't like, you know, when I yell more than I want to, or when I, you know, like telling him that like I don't always feel like I'm a good mom or a good whatever, really like made him, helped with that image of himself.
Yeah, too. I imagine that, right? It makes it, we're all like this, not just you. We all have our moments. Thanks, Emily. Heather had a question. I don't know, Heather, whether you want to unmute or do you want me to read it?
I can unmute. I'm just driving in my car with some of my kids, so that was why I just put it on there. So if you hear other kids, that's what you're hearing. But yeah, my question was basically, I have 3 kids in total, and my older 2, 5 and 3, are both autistic. My 5-year-old has already gone through ABA, and in our area they call it graduating, kind of when they're done and move on to preschool and don't really need ABA services anymore. My 3-year-old is newly diagnosed. She's definitely more of what some people would call, for lack of better words, higher functioning. A lot of her problem behavior stems from not having much flexibility, especially in her play. So she has a lot of like hitting, yelling, things like that when it comes to playing with her siblings. For instance, if my son will not say a certain phrase exactly as she tells him to, or if he's not putting a toy animal in the exact spot that she wants him to, then it's everything's off the table, fighting, hitting, kicking, throwing, the works. So I'm just curious if there's a way to utilize the balance program to gear it towards like flexibility and play.
My favorite outcome from us going through the balance program, and it wasn't direct, it just happened naturally, is that Tiago's and his older brother's relationship became stronger after going through balance. Tiago is very rigid. He obviously likes things his way. And his brother is a little bit more shy and he doesn't like to set him off. So he avoided Tiago all the time. They would interact only a little bit. As soon as Tiago started crying, he was like, nope, no more for the rest of the day. So it did help with, in terms of Tiago communicating with his brother, no, don't do that, or no, not this way. And so his brother, you know, he's much older as well. He's 9, so he has 5 years on Tiago. He's a little bit more patient, but it helped his brother understand exactly what Tiago wanted or didn't want, instead of running away because Tiago's screaming and he's afraid that, you know, that's going to get him in trouble, which it never does. I don't know why he thinks that. But I think that there is, it is very helpful with building that flexibility, because you're teaching them to tolerate those interruptions or things not going their way. And I feel like those instructions, like that cooperation that you work on the later steps, can be specifically programmed so that your child is working on, you know, following 1 to 2 different directions that her brother is trying to do with play, or 4 to 6 times where her brother is taking the lead and she's just following. So yes, there definitely is value in going through the balance program with siblings.
Do you think there would be a way to, I know it's like 2 5 to 10 minute sessions per day. Do you think there would be a way to utilize like your session time to include a sibling to try to like work directly on that flexibility with a sibling versus it just being like parent and child?
Yeah, I mean, if I feel like, let's say they're doing a 2-hour therapy session, they do balance for 5 minutes, your son can come in. Usually they program 5 trials, and 2 of those trials are the actual step that you're on. So all he would have to come in is through those 2 trials. And then someone's going to lead him. They're going to also lead her. So I think, yes, totally doable.
Okay, thank you so much.
And just for the people watching, and maybe also the people present here, there are 10 steps of the balance program. I don't know whether you want to just talk briefly about those 10 steps so that everyone has the balance program in their head, Carla, or would you like me to read them from the visual? Can you name them just so that people briefly know what the balance program is?
Yes, let me pull them up. So step 1 is promoting play. Step 2 in promoting play just means being fully present with each other. I feel if we can talk about it a little bit more if you want to. Step 2 is teaching the child to respond to their name. Step 3 and 4 are teaching the child to use their words. So part 1 is just part of that communication response, and then part 2 is the full communication response. Step 5 is is teaching them to accept disappointment. So you start working on the tolerance response. Step 6, they learn to cooperate a little. So they'll be doing 1 or 2 instructions. Step 7, they cooperate more, and that's where you start finding the balance. So they cooperate with 4 to 6 instructions. And then step 8, they cooperate with different instructions. So something that you haven't been working on up until step 8. Then step 9, you teach them to cooperate without the materials and things where they're usually kept. And then step 10, you're doing it during your natural routines.
Thanks, Carla. So appreciate that. One of the questions I hear a lot is, are the bins necessary? What's your opinion on that?
I don't know that an actual bin is super necessary, but I do think that you need to have materials so that you give the child a clear, it's just like another signal of this is child-led time and now it's parent-led time. So I feel like just having materials or a bin is very useful. You also, I use the bins to keep things close to us. So instead of having him get up and put the crayons away where they're usually kept, I had the crayon box next to us and I would just say, put them away. And that's how we practice until step 9. In short, yes, I feel like we should be using the bins. It's more than just having the materials. It's also like another cue for the kids to know now it's mom's turn to lead or dad's turn to lead.
I love that, Carla. Thanks so much. Amelia, I had a question. Do you want to unmute Amelia, or do you want me to read it for you?
Sure, I can unmute. So my question is about generalization and maintenance, and basically, like, do you still run maintenance trials? How do you continue to progress after you've completed the 10 steps and check the balance program is done, but I imagine there's still plenty of things you want to work on tolerance. Yeah, so just wondering what you're doing now, and if you have any specific recommendations for working with families and how to advise them.
So right now, I still do ABA therapy with Tiago every morning. So during that time, I use like strict balance trials, just because he cooperates more when I give him the chance to say, no, my way, please, or give him, kind of give him that cue of like, I'm calling your name, and he has time to kind of being all calmly respond to me. So I use it then. I also use it outside of practice time, so naturally, but it's not as, like, I would say, clean or perfect. Like earlier today, he has to be on the at the school bus stop at 11:30, and so right at 10:30, I'm like, Tiago, and he says, huh? And I said, it's time to clean up. And he goes, my way, please. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, keep playing. And then he walked away. So he came all the way from the living room to tell me, my way, please. And then he walked away. And then by the time he actually had to go, I walked up to him and I said, hey, it's time to go. And he put his phone down. And then I was like, do you want to be picked up or do you want to take my hand? And he was like, pick me up. And so we walked all the way downstairs. So yes, that's how I've been using it. I still kind of call his name sometimes. Sometimes I'll tell him to like stop what he's doing and clean up. And I give him the opportunity to say no, because I want him to continue to, advocate for himself and then hear me say, yeah, sure. Because, and I think, I don't know if it's in the course or in the manual or both, but we as parents tend to just call our kids to give them something to do. So I want him to be able to hear his name and have me call him and interrupt him, and then like be like, oh yeah, that was it, nothing, I don't need anything from you, continue what you're doing.
I just have to say, I thought that was so awesome. I mean, just the calmness of it, that first she said, yes, sure, keep on playing. And then that he just relinquished all by himself. I mean, how cool is that? Especially compared to what you started out with, right?
Yes.
So awesome. Naomi had a question too. Do you want to unmute, Naomi? Do you mind providing examples, that one?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you could give us some examples of what you were working on when you were doing work tasks and kind of what that looked like. I think you answered about the generalization and maintenance part of my question.
Some of the things that he was doing, so Tiago has developmental delay or disorder of speech and language. So I'm working really hard on building up his expressive language. Some of the tasks include like answering to personal information questions, tacting actions, the stuff that you would do in a regular therapy session. And then other stuff includes the instruction of let's go brush your teeth, let's go potty, clean up your toys. And I even did go to sleep, even though it was not time to sleep, because he does not like being told to go to sleep. So those were some of the things that I worked with him on.
So awesome. Naomi also asked, I'm just going to ask her quickly, how often and when do you run the balance program?
Right now I run it like 3 to 4 times a week. And that's just the 5 minutes, 4 or 5 trials, and we're good. We move on to something else.
I had one more question. Has anybody else in your life started using it once you kind of went through all 10 steps? Has he generalized it with anybody else?
So we don't really interact with kind of people that keep to themselves. But his dad is not a practitioner. He doesn't understand half of the things I'm trying to tell him. But he has been able to see that Tiago cooperates more with him. And even though he had more instructional control over behaviors because he's dad, he still sees like, oh, he's like, he used this words. He told me, no, thank you. Or he told me, Tiago loves to say, are you kidding me? When we ask him to do something. So that's the extent of people that have been able to see. I did see a friend the other day, and she did mention he's talking more. And I like to attribute that a little bit to balance, because of balance, I was able to get more work done in terms of his language program. So that, just those two things are most of what I've been able to see. I'm going back to Puerto Rico in 2 weeks, so maybe we can talk about what my mom thinks after a few months.
That's going to be awesome. Moms are the most difficult, though, right? With
Yeah,
regards to what
depends.
you think. So
Yeah.
do you also notice more toleration outside of session?
100%.
Nice.
Just in terms of tolerating, waiting. Dago did not wait for anything before without screaming. Now he waits, he goes, okay. And just I say no. And I still get some protesting because he's still 4 years old, but it's not to the extent where it's so disruptive, it's overtaking for 20-30 minutes. And half of the time he goes, "Ugh," and he just walks away. So that's pretty cool.
So cool. We all need to do balance with everyone in our lives. It sounds so awesome. Do you take data on yourself for balance?
You mean like on the the balance data sheets?
Emilia, do you want to unmute and ask?
Yes, I'm just curious if you take data on that aspect of, I know you said you do other ABA things with him, but
I did. I took data. I went fully into the parent manual and I took data. I will show it to you, but I'm really bad. My data sheets look awful because they're just for me. So, but I did use the data sheets that are in the manual.
very cool.
So awesome. Does anyone here want to ask a question? Otherwise, I'll ask a question that was posted on the Google Docs.
Yeah, I have one. When you're taking data, I guess I didn't see in the manual a way to graph that. I know I've checked out the Hirasmus app, and that looked really cool because you can, score it as you watch a video or as you're watching them in person. But I didn't know if there was a way to use the actual physical data sheets and then how you graph that.
I'm going to be honest, I did not graph it, but if you can probably graph it if you do like a percent correct out of your 10 trials that you did for the day, and then graph it easily. I feel like it's really easy for parents to take data and for practitioners to be able to organize that data and analyze it. So what I did, instead of checking it off, I would do like a P for prompt or a plus for independent per the trial. And then I would move on once he got mastery criteria.
Awesome. So another question that was asked by Ed, do you have suggestions for achieving buy-in from parents at the onset of treatment? They've had a negative ABA experience in the past, and now you're suggesting the balance program. Do you have any suggestions?
I think the two things that I really love about balance and helping with parent buy-in is that balance does a great job about not overwhelming parents. So it already starts with a low expectation of 5 minutes twice a day. That's all you have to do. And I feel like that's achievable for parents who are busy, have other children in the house, and other responsibilities. So that's one. And two, especially for families that have had a negative experience in the past, is that balance is parent-led. And that also means that you're not going to move on to the next step, even if it's mastered, if the parent is not comfortable with moving. And so I feel like we really need to make sure that we're honoring that, because that's going to help with your buy-in. That's going to let them know like, oh, this person is really listening to me, so I might give this a shot. Like, if we're not going to move on, we're not going to do anything that I'm not comfortable with or that I'm not ready to continue, practicing. So just using those two things. Hey, it's super low effort, just 5 minutes once or twice a day. and like you're the one who's leading this both with your child and in terms of how we progress through the steps. I'm just here to help you, like, you know, teach you how to do it and answer any questions.
So just jumping in, a couple of things. One is, and again, I know Penny may be able to speak to some of this, and Carla, you may as well. I know you've done it with your son, so obviously funding is, you know, you. But, you know, in terms of funders and in terms of being able to replicate and do some of this, we've tried doing that, and we've primarily done this through insurance funding. And obviously, again, it's a parent training kind of piece and a parent training, part of the parent training model, if you will. But I'm just curious as to other people, and, you know, if they've, I know you mentioned that, you know, trying to transfer some of this knowledge into the school system. And I'm just curious, one, about different funders people may be using this with. So whether it's insurance, whether it's schools, whether it's something else. And two, making that determination. So again, I know for us, kind of how we tend to screen, or how we tend to say, okay, is this going to be a student we're going to do balance with? Is this a student that we're just going to do universal protocol? Is this a student that we're going to do SBT with? So I just was curious as to kind of how you know, what that profile of a good candidate kind of might look like. I think that might be helpful maybe for people to percolate on.
Okay. I think I can answer the question about the profile of the candidate, but I don't know. I started Balance and I changed companies, so I'm not doing it through funding. I was able to do the PFA through like insurance. So I can tell you like how I would kind of separate everything into their behavior plan for funding.
Whatever you want to share, Carla, it's totally fine. I'm like putting you on the spot with these questions, so.
Those are some really good questions. I don't know, Penny, do you want me to talk first and then you can jump in and fix whatever I messed up?
There's no messing up. You're doing such an awesome job. And I do really, really want to thank you right now for everything that you're doing. No, please tell us everything that you've been doing.
The profile of the candidate is very explicit in the program, 3 to 6 years. I feel like I want to be careful with the brand new 2-year-olds, because I feel like it's also part of their development to engage in these behaviors. So we should also kind of be careful of bringing some 18-month-olds into the balance program, because they, you know, it's part of their development to tantrum. Anyway. And then also kids that engage in behaviors that are not severe, just disruptive. So if there's some severe aggression, they should be doing PFA and SBT. If there's self-injury, they should be doing PFA and SBT. These are for kids that tantrum, like they just fall on the floor and kick their feet for maybe 20-30 minutes, and it's not age appropriate anymore. Kids that maybe throw stuff off the desk, but it's not really property destruction, it's just more throwing. So just behaviors that are considered mild when you compare them to your client that has severe, really severe problem behaviors. And then I also would say that clients that you feel would be safe when challenged, and that parents will feel comfortable dealing with those behaviors. If the parents like, I don't want to set them off because I don't want them to hurt me or themselves, then I don't feel like balance is for them.
I think the latter is such a good point, right? It really has to do with the comfort level of the parent. I think it's got to do with the magnitude of the behaviors and the severity of the behaviors. And the biggest difference is this is parent-led, whereas PFA SBT is clinician-led. So it cannot go outside the scope of a parent.
Exactly.
Yeah, the parent comfort level is a great criteria. Amelia agreed. Yeah, I very often use the balance program as part of my parent training. And what I love is I'll actually quickly show it. have taken Kelsey Ripple's data sheet and made my own. And what I like about it is I can add every single parent's goal in here and then measure it up against the emerging problem behavior, the child-led play permitted, child-led play observed, cooperation observed, and then here I will put all my targets in. But what I like is I can compare it to, okay, our current target is this. Did I get emerging problem behavior? And was adult integrity in check? Was cooperation observed? So I really do love using the balance program as part of parent training.
Yeah.
And I can speak a little bit on our agencies and that, you know, we've done the balance program. And one of the things I think is important, and Carla, I think you hit on some of this, is that we all have freedom. So you can start out and say, we're going to try balance, and then go, oh, this is not a good plan. This is not a good choice. And again, you can even say that to the parents in terms of, we're going to start out with this, but if we feel like we need to transition, like we can totally transition, or we can totally go back to the drawing board. And we actually found when we were doing a cohort with Dr. Ruppel, and we had 3 students that we thought we were going to do balance with and only ended up doing it with 1, and the other 2 ended up doing SVT, just because it was like, this isn't working the way that we thought it was going to work. And just being flexible in terms of rebalancing, reassessing. That's what I really love about this whole process too, in general, is that there's just this constant analysis, applied behavior analysis, and retooling, and that can really looking at what's working, what's not working, and how we can kind of do that. And for us, it's typically, you know, again, the similar criteria for when we would consider balance versus when we consider doing SBT. It does get interesting when we start to get into like, what's the definition of like a you know, disruptive behavior versus, you know, this is getting a little more dangerous. And sometimes, quite frankly, size plays a matter. Like if we're looking at this with little ones, and I believe that they are, I'm not 1,000%, so don't quote me. But I believe they are doing research with kids of various ages for balance. So while the publication in behavior analysis and practice was in that 3 to 6 range, I know that they're definitely looking at it for kids with other needs. And, you know, I definitely look forward to seeing, you know, a lot more articles published on it and a lot more research, no, not just articles, but just information. And, you know, we've been so pleased with in the Facebook group, how, you know, we've been able to kind of partner and have hangouts with Dr. Ruppel and, you know, kind of get a way to kind of disseminate the information and just share, you know, a different way of doing things. And I think that that's hard for a lot of people in the field who've been in the field for a number of years to be willing to try something a little different. But again, I'd like to go back to database decision making, and you can always try it and go, oh, this experiment failed. Or you could try it and go, wow, that was a little different. This was really effective. And I think the other thing I would argue and throw in there is, again, there's definitely been a lot of talk about more social validity data in our field and in our practices. And again, getting that social validity data from the client as well as the parent. You know, as a parent, how do you think it's going? You know, rather than just, sometimes I think we try to force interventions, you know, despite parents saying like, I'm not really cool with this, but really kind of checking in that next, how did that feel? How's that going? What do we need to change so that it works with your lifestyle and what's going on? What do we need to troubleshoot? And I think that's really important things that we have to continue to consider. And I'd also love to see this. And I'm curious, Carla, with your son too, if they would be open to like a preschool life skills piece in their classroom. But again, we only control so much.
I know. I mean, his teacher, we got lucky. She's amazing and she's willing to try anything. She's excited that I'm a BCBA. So yeah, that is a good idea. And I love all the points you made.
Yeah, Karen, I specifically love the point you make about the calories that an intervention can cost the parent, and Hanley speaks about that too, right? Our intervention cannot cost more calories than the problem behavior. And even though the balance program only asks for 5 minutes, if a parent says, I don't have it, then they don't have it, then we still can't run it. And then it still has to be up for consideration for skills-based treatment. Because there we are with the problem behavior. And if a parent cannot run it for whatever reason, then we can say, but that's great, and it only costs. And but if it's not there, it's not there.
I think, Penny, you bring up at a really important point that, again, we forget sometimes as professionals, and again, a lot of it depends on just what our educational background might be and just our experiences. So in some cases, we might start out and we make the proposal and the parent says, I can't do this. But we have to make sure that we don't necessarily, that we keep hope alive in some cases, and maybe circle back at another point. Or also, and this is what I like about balance, speaking as a parent of a child that has some complex medical needs, you know, when I first thought about during the middle of the pandemic, early intervention in our state was all virtual, which is super exciting to do, virtual PT and virtual OT. And, you know, my mother-in-law suggested doing some outpatient. And at the time I was working from home and I was like, oh, just the thought of taking my son 2 days a week, like this just feels so overwhelming. But, you know, in that case, I sucked it up and I did it. And I told myself, look, even if I just end up going 1 day a week, like that's progress. But just by overcoming that mental block and kind of starting out, like now it's just part of my routine, you know, taking him to 2 days a week for this extra stuff. And the thing with balance is, again, we have to kind of have that just right kind of, we have to have enough to actually have effective treatment. So we can't do it too little, but we still can kind of play around with building it up, shaping it up, and helping parents overcome this idea of this being a mountain.
I love that
rather
point.
than a molehill.
So true.
You know, we've even found that for some of our parents where we've said, you know, parent training could just be 15 minutes. It could be just, 15 minutes before the end of the session or 15 minutes, you know, at the beginning. And we've had parents visibly relax, go, oh, it doesn't have to be 2 hours. No, it doesn't have to be 2 hours. It doesn't have to be an hour. And since we're insurance funded, that's why 15 minutes is important, because that's usually the lowest you can round down to. But, you know, helping meet people where they're at and being accepting of the fact, Carla, like you were saying, like that it might not, or like Penny, you were saying about the amount of buy-in from the parent, that it's not worth it and it's going to be detrimental to everybody if you try to run it and it's just not a good time, it's not a good fit, you know, there's other things kind of going on. And I do think it's important for us to dialogue with families about the reasons why. And, you know, again, Dr. Hanley does this a lot when we talk about the, you know, what are the things they really can't do, you know, and why is it they really can't do that? Is it, you know, and sometimes you find, well, it's just, it seems like it would be a bad idea to let them walk around the classroom without their shoes on. Okay, but is it hurting anyone? You know, and kind of, then you can start to piece out and again, analyze what are the variables that are affecting the parent's ability. And I know sometimes the use of video too is another way of just like, just take a 5-minute video on your cell phone, just do a little snapshot, you know, and kind of just being creative. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now.
I love that. I really love that point. And you're right? We can look at it, examine it, and then come back to it. I really do love those points. That's very true. Kaylin, you made such an awesome point. Can you please, because I know you use the balance program a lot. I love what you said about step 1.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion about who is a good fit for this program? When do we do SPT? I mean, I think, I don't know, I hesitate to say 100%, but I personally haven't seen a time where you can really go wrong getting step 1 down with the families. I have just been, it's crazy. You watch, you go through step 1 and you just start with the play and you start with connecting and, you know, releasing parents from making it a teaching opportunity, releasing them from everything else and just having them like be present with their child and focus on their child and play with them. And almost universally, I feel like I just get to observe like a sigh of relief and like a moment of joy and then I've had parents tell me like, I have not done this in 2 years because they got their diagnosis and then it was this and this and this and this and, you know, and, you know, and it's also, Hanley talks about it being a great tool where you can just ensure that there's not challenging behavior. And yes, I agree with all of that. And I think it's great for all those reasons. But I think just that buy-in, that connection that you build is everything. So I think regardless of what path you take a client or a family on, I almost universally am doing that step one. And sometimes I don't do balance, but I just frame it as like, you know, positive interaction or implementing a free play or, you know, however you want to frame it. But I've had a lot of success with that. And I'm a huge fan of step one.
I was actually thinking to myself the other day, like any type of relationship can benefit from step one because it's just more than playing. It's literally just being present. Like there's no other interruptions. It's 5 minutes of you and me. And I was looking at my husband the other day and I was like, we could probably do step one, 5 minutes, you know, once or twice a week. And that can help our relationship. Same with like a coworker, just 5 minutes of that, you know, positive interactions, someone's just enjoying each other's company. So I 100% agree with that. And I love that you're doing that and, you know, with all your clients. Someone actually, I put in the questions that the program is set up for kids for 3 to 6 years old. But if it, you know, there's any elements that can be used for other ages. And I was thinking, yeah, like step one, 100% can be used for anyone in any type of relationship, but like, you know, learning to use our words. We're all adults, we can talk, we express ourselves, but do we really, like some of us need help with being able to communicate our needs in a direct and effective way. Some of us need to learn how to tolerate things not going our ways. We're BCBAs and we tend to be a little bit rigid ourselves. So there's a lot of value in just taking elements of balance and implementing it where it needs to be implemented. It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, this person needs to go through all the steps, but do they just need to work on tolerating, and how can I do that? Well, first let's teach them to say, I don't like this. And then, well, I understand you don't like that, but we're going to push you a little bit. So that's
I
a
love
really,
that.
yeah.
I love that point, Carla. And I love how you take little bits and pieces and really apply that to this learner. This person can benefit from that. Sometimes you're going to use all of it, but sometimes maybe just a little bit. Actually, Amelia, you made a really good point about other ages. Can you just expand on that?
Yes, so I was excited to hear that that they are doing the research for other ages, because I have implemented it with some older kids, and I know that there's not the research for it yet, but I think it's so valuable. And I've even used it like in one case where there wasn't even really problem behavior, but the child just had such a history of like the discrete trial teaching that he wouldn't request the things that he needed. And so even though he was a little bit older, it was really beneficial, even just that step one where you can ask your mom for for something, was huge for their relationship. And we saw this just amazing increase of joint attention. And it's just like, how was this missed for so long? And so that's part of why I get so excited about it. And then for older learners as well, where they're not having those severe behaviors, I think it just lays out so nicely the steps in a way that I think is a little bit easier for parents to digest than like the full-blown SBT, if SBT isn't really warranted for the severe problem behavior, but if the concerns are more about the communication piece and maybe less overt problem behaviors.
I really love that. And so true. And I love how we are taking parts of the program, expanding it to other ages, other settings, considering, can we get a discrete child back to play And yeah, I really love all the discussion points. Carla, we've reached 2 p.m. Do you have any wonderful, fantastic rounding off statements? And yeah, everyone, please, I'm going to invite you to watch the CEUs. I'd love to see what you put out there, but do you perhaps have any wonderful rounding off statements?
I don't know about wonderful, but I can say something else. I think that if we are trying to build or trying to figure out a way to build a better relationship with our clients' parents, balance is the way to go. I find that it's been very valuable, not just for my son, but for myself as a practitioner and as a parent. And I also see the value in helping a parent go through this process. It's going to help build confidence in being able to work with their child, to being able to say, hey, I was able to get my child through this challenging, process, give them that confidence that, we're gonna do something that's gonna usually sets them off, but I have all these skills and my kid has all these skills, so we're gonna go for it. So building that confidence, building trust with the provider. Sometimes we go in really hot and we're like, here's all the research, this is what you need to read, and I also need you to take beta. Oh, and on top of that, you need to do this 10 times every day. But building trust and like, hey, I'm just here to support you, there's a low expectation and we'll go at your pace, versus just throwing all this stuff on them and overwhelming them and then them shutting down. So yeah, what I have to say. Come to my CEU.
Yeah, what beautiful rounding of statements, right? What I loved is just the beautiful summary, including you're going to go at your pace, the support, skill building, confidence, trust, rapport. I mean, all such beautiful aspects. And I really want to thank you so much for taking the time to come and join this space and answer everyone's questions. And I really look forward to seeing your CEU, and thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for inviting me. This was really fun. Hopefully I'll see you guys soon.
Yes. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.